In this video, I'm going to show you an easy method of finding the squares of 2-digit, 3-digit, and 4-digit numbers. So let's understand this method by finding the square of 2-digit numbers. Here we have the first 2-digit number 43, and we are going to find its square. Usually we will write this number a couple of times, that is 43 and 43, and then we will multiply. So when we do the multiplication, we will get four different multiplications and then add the numbers, and we will do it like that. So when we do like that, there is a possibility that we may make some mistakes. So we're not going to use this method. Instead, we are going to follow this method, which will be a lot easier than the usual multiplication method. So let's understand how this method works. So first, we need to split this into two numbers using the place value of the digits. So the place value of digit 4 is 10. So I can write that as 40. And then the place value of 3 is 1. So I can write that as 3. So basically, we have written the number 43 as 40 plus 3, and in the next step, we have to find the square of each numbers. That is 40 square, which means it is equal to 40 times 40. And this is so easy. We just have to multiply the leftmost numbers. 4 times 4 is 16, and then add the two zeros. So it's going to be 1600. But I'm not going to write down as it is. I'm going to write down as like in place values. So thousands, then we have hundreds, then we have tens, and then we have ones. So I will write the 1600 as 1000 under the thousands column, and then the remaining 600 into the 600s column. So we are done with finding the square of 40. Then similarly, we have to find the square of 3, which is 9. So we can write that under the ones column, 9. So in the first step, we have to find the squares of these two numbers, which we have completed. And then in the next step, we have to find the product of these two numbers and then double it. So that is 40 times 3, and that is equal to 120, because 4 times 3 is 12. And then put 1 0. And then we have to double it. So we multiply by 2, which means this is 12 times 2, which is 24, and then add 0. So it's going to be 240. But we will write the 240 as 200 under the hundreds column, and then 40 into the tens column. Now the addition is going to be a lot easier. So you can see that we can start adding from the ones digit. This is 9, and this is 40, and then 600 plus 200 is 800. Then we have this 1000. So basically, this is the answer for the square of 43. That is, we can read it just like that, 1849. So I will write it. So this is the square of 43. Now we will find the square of another two-digit number, that is the square of 96. And this number is bigger than the previous number 43 that we just did. So let's find the square using this method. So first, we have to split this into two numbers using the place value of the digits. So it's going to be 90 and 6. And then we have to find the square of each of the numbers. That is, first I'll find the square of 90, equivalent to 90 multiplied with 90. So here it's going to be easy. We just have to multiply the leftmost numbers. So that's going to be 9 times 9 is 81, and then put 2 0. So it's going to be 8100, but we will write them under the corresponding place value columns. So we have the place value columns thousands, hundreds, tens, and ones. So we'll write this 8100 as 8000 under the thousands column, and then 100 under the hundreds column. So we are done with the finding the square of 90. And then similarly, the square of 6 is 36, but we will write that as 30 under the tens column, and then the remaining 6 under the ones column. So now we have to multiply these two numbers and then take the double of it. So it's basically going to be 90 times 6. And this will be 9 times 6 is 54, and then add 1 0. But since we have to double it, we multiply by 2. So it will be 0. Then 54 times 2 is 108. So it's basically 1080, which we will write it as 1000 under the thousands column, and then the 80 under the tens column. Now you see that the addition is going to be a lot easier. So we'll start from adding from the ones digit, that is 6 first, and then 30 plus 80 is 110. But we will write the 110 as 10 over here, and then carry the 100 into the hundreds column. So now you see that this is 100 plus 100, which is 200. And then finally, this is 8,000 plus 1,000, which is 9,000. So we finally got the result over here. We can just read it like that. It is 9,210 plus 6 is 16. So it is 9,216. This is the square of the number 96. Now we will find the squares of three-digit numbers using this method. And so here we have our first three-digit number, that is 123. So in the first step, we have to split this into three numbers, because here we have three digits, and we do this using the place value of the digits. The place value of 1 is 100, so it will be 100. The place value of 2 is 10, so it will be 2 tens, which will be 20. And then the place value of 3 is 1, so it will be 3 ones, which is 3. So we have split this into three numbers, that is 100, 20, and 3. In the next step, we have to find the squares of each of the numbers and put them into the corresponding place value columns. So the square of 100 will be 10,000. So we need the column 10,000. I'll write 10,000, which means we can write the next column, that is 1,000, then hundreds, then tens, and finally ones. So let me put the square of 100, that is 10,000, under the 10,000 column. And then the square of 20 is 400. I'll write under the hundreds column. Then the square of 3 is 9. That I will put under the ones column. So we are done with finding the squares of each of the three numbers. And in the next step, we have to find the product of two numbers and then double it. But since here we have three numbers, we have to take two numbers at a time, find the product and double it. So first, I'm going to take 120 and find its products. That will be 2000. And then I have to double it. So that will be 4000, which I will write under the thousands column. And next, we have to take these two numbers, 20 and 3. The product of 20 and 3 is 60. And since we double it, it will be 120. And that we can write it as 120. So 100 goes into the 100 column, and 20 goes into the tens column. And finally, we have to take these two numbers, 100 and 3, multiply them, which will be 300, and then double it. So it will be 600, which we will write under the hundreds column. Now we have to add all these numbers starting from the ones digit. So the ones we have only 9, and then in tens we have 20, and then in hundreds we have 400 plus 100, which is 500, and then with adding with 600 we get 1100, but we will write it as 100 over here and carry the 1000 into the 1000 column. So in thousands column we now have 4000 and 1000, which is 5000 when we add them. And finally in 10,000 we have only 10,000s. So we got the answer, which we can read it from this one. So it is going to be 10,000, 5,000, that is 15,000, and then 129, that will be 129, which means our answer to this one is 15,129. So this is the square of the number 123. Now we will find the square of a bigger three-digit number, that is the square of 987. So in the first step, we have to split this into three numbers using the place value of the digits. So I'm going to split this as 900. 80, and 7. And then we have to find the squares of each of the three-digit numbers and put them under the corresponding place value columns. So the square of 900, and that's going to be, if we multiply 9 into 9, it will be 81, and then put the four zeros. So it's going to be 810,000. So here we have another column, that is 100,000. So first I will write 100,000, and that means the next one will be 10,000, and then thousands, hundreds, tens, and ones. So we can write this 810,000 as 800,000 into the 100,000, and then the remaining 10,000 into the 10,000 column. So we're done with finding the square of 900, and then the square of 80, that will be 6,400. So we'll write it as 6,000 under the thousands, and then the 400 under the hundreds. And then the square of 7 is 49, which we will write it as 40, and then 9 into the ones column. So we have completed finding the squares of each of the three numbers. And then in the next step, we have to take two numbers, find the product, and then double it. So first, let me take these two numbers, 980, multiply them and find the products, and then double it. So it will be 900 into 80, that will be 72, and then place three zeros. Then we have to double it, so it will be three zeros and 144. So it's basically 144,000, which means we can write that as 100,000 into the 100,000 column, and then 44,000, we will write it as 40,000 into the tens column, and then the remaining 4,000 into the thousands column. So then we will find the product of 80 and 7, which will be 560. Then we have to double it. So that will be 1120, which we can write it as 1000 into the 1000 column, and then 120. So 100 goes into the 100, and 20 goes into the tens column. And finally, we have to find the product of 907, and that will be 6,300, but we have to double it. So that will be 12,600, which means we can write that as 10,000 into the 10,000 column, and then we have remaining 2,600, which we can write under this 1,000, and then 600 into the hundreds column. So now we have to add all these numbers starting from the ones digit. So under ones we have only 9, and under 10 we have 40 and 20, that will be 60 when we add them. And then into the 100 column we have 400, 500, and 600, that will be 1100. So we can write it as 100 here, and then carry the 1000 into the thousands column. So now we see this is 1000, 7000, 11,000, 12,000, and then 14,000. So we will write only the 4,000 over here, and then carry the 10,000 into the 10,000 column. Now we see that we have 10,000, 20,000, 20 plus 40 is 60,000, and then 70,000. And finally, we have this 800 plus 100, which is 900,000. So we got the answer. We just have to read it just like that. So it will be 974,169. I will write it. It is 974,169. So this is the square of the number 987.